The sky tore open with fire. Shells ripped through the morning fog, throwing mud and blood into the air. A soldier crouched in the trench, lungs burning, fingers raw from gripping his rifle. The world had shrunk to a heartbeat that trembled with every distant scream. Smoke stung his eyes, acrid and choking, yet the sound of boots and shouts pressed closer, unrelenting. He could feel fear curling in his stomach, a living thing, heavier than the lead cutting through the earth around him. Around him, comrades fell, some silently, some with the scream of a soul ripped from its body. His mind raced faster than his body could move. One misstep, one glance up, and it would all be over. Yet, amid the chaos, the drill of survival pushed him forward. The metallic taste of blood, the stink of gunpowder, the mud clinging to his skin, all sharpened him, made every nerve alive. A command crackled through the radio, distant and garbled, yet urgent. Advance. He swallowed, feeling the weight of every choice. What would it take to survive this? Every instinct screamed, every muscle ached, and he stepped forward into a storm that would define him. Europe in 1944 was a continent aflame. Armies clashed across forests, rivers, and shattered towns, each movement measured in blood and steel. The Allies pushed from the west, carving a path through fortified lines, while the Axis struggled to hold collapsing fronts. Every village, every hill, became a crucible of strategy and desperation. Soldiers moved through terrain, scarred by shells, roads cratered, rivers choked with debris. The air carried a mix of smoke, cordite, and something darker, the anticipation of death. On the front lines, fear was constant. Units were stretched thin, supplies erratic, and communication fragile. Artillery thundered day and night, punctuated by the scream of bullets and the shattering of concrete. Commanders made decisions with incomplete maps and shattered intelligence, each choice carrying the weight of hundreds of lives. Terrain dictated tactics. Forests became death traps, open fields killing grounds. Soldiers learned to read shadows and listen to silence, for a pause in the bombardment could signal an approaching assault. Amid the strategic maneuvers, the human element was unrelenting. Men slept in mud, ate cold rations, and carried fear like an extra uniform. Letters from home were rare, and news of victories often drowned in personal loss. The line between courage and panic blurred. Hesitation could be fatal, and blind obedience just as deadly. Survival depended as much on mental fortitude as on marksmanship. The human psyche on the battlefield was a weapon as unpredictable as any artillery piece. Fatigue gnawed at soldiers' resolve. Days and nights blended under the constant hammer of gunfire. Sleep became a luxury few could afford, and the mind filled gaps with horrors, whispers in the dark, imagined shadows, the memory of fallen comrades. Fear mutated with every explosion, every scream, every unexpected movement. For many, it was not the bullets, but the terror itself that threatened to end them. Logistics amplified the strain. Rations were limited, ammunition scarce, and medical aid often hours away. Units relied on coordination, but chaos often fractured even the best-laid plans. Orders came through radio static or hurried runners, sometimes misheard, sometimes never received. Each soldier carried not only his rifle, but the weight of expectation, responsibility, and survival instinct. A single miscalculation could shatter a formation, turning strategic advantage into carnage. Commanders, too, felt the psychological toll. Decisions had to balance tactical gains with human cost. Some pushed men beyond endurance, hoping fear would harden resolve. Others hesitated, fearing the collapse of morale. The battlefield became a theater of human fragility as much as military might. Fear was a living presence, shaping choices, dictating movements, and silently claiming the weakest, even before the first bullet struck. From the soldier's perspective, every step was measured against invisible threats. Mud clung to boots, rifles jammed at the worst possible moment, and the stench of death hung thick in the air. Fear was constant, a pulse beneath the adrenaline, sharpening senses, yet threatening to paralyze. Comrades' faces blurred with exhaustion and terror, eyes wide with the same unspoken question, will I survive this? Each decision, each hesitation, carried consequences heavier than the weight of their packs. Leadership added another layer of tension. Officers moved like shadows, issuing orders while absorbing the terror radiating from their men. Strategy collided with human limitation. A commander could plan the perfect assault, yet a single faltering squad could unravel the operation. Responsibility weighed on every shoulder. Success meant survival for some. Failure spelled slaughter. The enemy was more than an opposing force. They were a psychological presence, lurking in ruined buildings, forests, and fog. The unpredictability of ambushes, snipers, and counterattacks made every advance a gamble. Soldiers learned to read patterns, anticipate movements, and trust instincts honed under fire. Yet no amount of training could erase the dread that came with stepping into open ground, knowing the unseen eyes of the enemy tracked every movement. Technology reshaped fear into a tangible force. Tanks rolled over landscapes once considered safe, their engines a low, threatening growl. Artillery rained from a distance, invisible but devastating, turning forests and fields into craters of mud and blood. Machine guns tore through cover, forcing soldiers to move in calculated bursts, every exposure a potential death sentence. Even communication tools, radios, signal flares, could betray positions or fail at critical moments, leaving men isolated amid chaos. Tactics evolved to exploit both fear and opportunity. Coordinated assaults combined infantry, armor, and air support, creating overwhelming pressure on defenders. Ambushes leveraged terrain, shadows, and timing, magnifying the psychological strain on soldiers already teetering on the edge. Every maneuver demanded split-second decisions, with lives balanced on instinct and training. Moral dilemmas shadowed each engagement. Orders sometimes conflicted with personal ethics, civilians were caught in the crossfire, and hesitation could mean death for others. Fear forced soldiers to confront not only enemy fire, but the consequences of their own actions. Survival was rarely simple. It demanded navigating a maze of danger, obligation, and conscience. The morning air was thick with smoke and the smell of cordite. Soldiers crawled through shattered fields, boots sinking into mud, rifles slick with rain and blood. Every heartbeat sounded like a drum, each step a negotiation with death. Explosions ripped the earth around them, sending shards of metal and soil into the sky. Visibility was minimal. Shadows danced in the fog, and every movement could be the last. A key ridge loomed ahead, its capture critical to the operation. Commanders urged forward, but the terrain was unforgiving. Machine gun nests, partially hidden in craters, opened fire without warning. Men dropped, cries lost in the cacophony, while those remaining pressed on, driven by training, fear, and sheer will. The line wavered under pressure. Hesitation meant annihilation, yet the instinct to survive pulled them back. The chaos was total, yet moments of clarity emerged. A soldier spotted a flank unguarded, signaling others to follow. Decisions had to be instant, precise, lethal. Leadership and courage collided with terror. One misstep could undo everything. Amid the smoke, mud, and relentless gunfire, a single choice would determine the outcome of the assault. The ridge trembled under constant bombardment. Men surged forward in waves, some falling, others slipping through shattered cover, each movement a desperate negotiation with fear. Mortar fire pounded the flanks, spraying debris that shredded uniforms and shattered helmets. The air vibrated with the whistle of bullets, the distant roar of tanks, and the relentless screams of the wounded. Every second stretched, compressed, and stretched again. Commanders shouted over the din, directing squads through chaos, balancing aggression with caution. Small teams exploited gaps, flanking enemy positions, while others held fire to avoid annihilation. Fear became a tool and a weapon. Those who mastered it pushed forward. Those who succumbed became casualties. Victory hung by a thread, measured in inches of ground and fleeting seconds of opportunity. As the ridge finally fell, silence did not come immediately. Only the echoes of destruction remained. Bodies lay twisted, mud-streaked, smoke curling around the survivors' faces. The cost was immeasurable, yet the position was gained. One decision, one courageous move, had shifted the battle. But it left an indelible mark on every man who had survived. The battlefield fell into an uneasy stillness. Smoke lingered, clinging to torn trees and scorched earth. The cries of the wounded pierced the quiet, mingling with the distant rumble of artillery still echoing across the horizon. Soldiers moved like ghosts, dragging the injured, checking weapons, and counting the cost in hushed tones. Each face reflected exhaustion, relief, and a new, heavier fear, the knowledge of what had been endured. Corpses lay scattered, some barely recognizable, mud and blood masking uniforms. The human toll was staggering. The ground itself seemed soaked with it. Yet there was no time for grief. Orders came to consolidate, to fortify, to prepare for the inevitable counterattack. Survivors moved with mechanical precision, hearts still pounding from adrenaline, minds grappling with shock. Every step across the ridge reminded them of those lost. Some whispered names, others stared blankly, unable to process. The air was thick with the stench of gunpowder and death, a smell that would linger in memory long after the earth healed. Victory was tangible, but it came at a price few fully understood. The invisible wounds of fear cutting deeper than bullets ever could. Beyond the immediate carnage, the consequences stretched far. The ridge's capture shifted the strategic balance, opening routes for reinforcements and supply lines. Commanders recalculated, seizing momentum where hesitation might have spelled disaster. Maps were redrawn, orders reissued, yet the human cost remained written in every haunted face. Survivors carried the weight of what they had seen. Some moved with grim determination, hardened by experience. Others faltered, plagued by tremors, nightmares, and guilt. Fear had done its work, leaving scars that no medal or commendation could erase. Letters sent home would tell of bravery, but the reality of shattered bodies and broken minds remained hidden, locked away behind a soldier's stoic mask. The battlefield itself became a memorial. Craters, ruined fortifications, and twisted metal marked the landscape, a constant reminder of the violence that had passed. Nature would reclaim it eventually, but memory would not fade. For those who survived, each step forward was a negotiation with fear, a test of resilience, and a measure of what it truly cost to endure. Fear lingered long after the guns fell silent. In quiet moments, soldiers traced the memory of mud, blood, and fire, feeling the weight of those who never returned. Victory was measured in ground gained, yet the true battle had been fought within. The struggle to move forward when every instinct screamed to retreat. War carved deeper than wounds, shaping minds, bending courage, and leaving shadows that would never fully fade. In the end, survival was not only about bullets dodged or orders followed, it was about enduring the invisible enemy that haunted every heartbeat